This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning. You should be able to see my screen. Welcome to the November monthly partnership meeting of the Southeast and Caribbean Disaster Resilience Partnership. My name is Heather McCarthy. I'm the Executive Director of SCDRP, and I am speaking to you today from lovely Jacksonville, Florida. So who is SCDRP? The Southeast and Caribbean Disaster Resilience Partnership, or SCDRP, is a diverse and multidisciplinary affiliation of public, private, academic, and nonprofit groups, and we work to strengthen the ability of our region's coastal communities, economies, and environments to recover from the next coastal storm. Remember, we have a very active newsletter and we have a listserv that's now something like 432 individuals on our listserv, and they participate in these meetings and also receive our newsletters. And they come from all different resilience sectors and interests. We share information several times a month, such as webinars and online events, important policy or legislation updates, regional updates, any newsletters you're affiliated with, important announcements. This is where we call to you to serve on committees. We post job opportunities in resilience-related fields, which is certainly growing. This is also where we post calls for proposals and funding announcements, and of course, calls for any input on tools and products from members. So very exciting newsletter. We always have important updates at the end. So please look for those in your email box. If you're not signed up for that, or you would like to share with colleagues, the link is available on our website. So today's special. We have two guest speakers scheduled for today. Our first speaker will just say a quick hello. This is Dr. Ashley Ward from Duke Nicholas Institute for Energy, Environment, and Sustainability. Dr. Ward will be facilitating an exciting post-meeting gathering after our 2023 annual meeting in Miami. And this will include an off-site dinner mingle on Wednesday night, January 25th, and then a roundtable discussion and lunch during the morning of Thursday, January 26th, and she will tell you more about that. And these gatherings will include invited resilience officers and emergency managers from our partnership. Our second speaker today is Dr. Mona Behl from Georgia Sea Grant. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce today's first speaker, Dr. Ashley Ward, who joins us today from Durham, North Carolina. Ashley is the Senior Policy Associate for Engagement and Outreach at Duke Nicholas Institute for Energy, Environment, and Sustainability. Ashley's career has focused on engaging communities to identify and address issues and helping communities develop long-term sustainable strategies relevant to their particular community needs. Her previous work with NOAA's Carolinas RISA team connected rural and urban communities and policy decision makers with relevant climate and health data, particularly related to vulnerabilities and impacts. Engagement with communities across the Carolinas revealed a knowledge and access gap in the climate data, wherein many communities did not have the necessary data and expertise to inform decision-making, planning, and preparedness. Ashley and her colleagues at RISA worked with community stakeholders to develop a suite of open access, web-based tools to address these issues. Before her work with CISA, Ashley completed her Ph.D. in geography, and she worked with communities throughout North Carolina on a host of issues, such as local food availability and asset-based economic development strategies. Ashley's passion is building coalitions to advance scientific understanding and communicate information in a way that is relevant for use by decision makers. So, having worked in a broad range of communities with varying levels of capacity, Ashley is particularly thoughtful about meeting communities where they are and working from there to achieve community goals. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to present Dr. Ashley Ward.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all giving me a few minutes of your time at the top of this meeting. I don't have slides. We're just going to talk to each other. So I want to sort of tell you a little bit. Thank you for that introduction. I don't really have to say much about who I am now, so that's awesome. I work in the water policy program at the Nicholas Institute. The water policy program is focused on domestic water issues and policy. We have a strong focus on policy analysis and also using data and information to inform policy and decision making. The status and the challenges around data regarding water is not unlike some of the same challenges that we face with connecting communities with climate data. A lot of it is challenging, a lot of it is difficult to access and turn into information that's usable for policymaking decisions and planning, preparedness, and all of those things. So some of our most recent projects have been the Internet of Water project, which the goal of that project is to facilitate the modernization of water data infrastructure, largely in public agencies across the U.S. We also have projects that work on water affordability, and we're recently, as you will hear in a moment, moving toward disasters. We work with partners across the spectrum, from federal to state, local, NGOs, and private sector partners. And one of the things that we excel at is convening. And we like to think that we do this very thoughtfully with regard to context and topics. We really make an effort at getting people to the table that normally don't talk to each other. I feel like this is, how we generate some of the best ideas and more nuanced and deep understanding of the problems that we're trying to solve. And it provides some of the most realistic pathways for identifying solutions to those problems. And so that's what we're doing and hope to do in Miami in January. We just conducted and completed the Aspen Institute, Nicholas Institute Water Forums just last month. The focus of that was on disasters. We've also been engaging with state and local partners on water-related disaster issues. And one of the things that continues to come up in those conversations is the need to sort of get resilience professionals at the table with those who work in disaster. And so that's our goal for this roundtable in Miami in January. We particularly think this is a great moment to have these conversations with respect to recent legislation and investment in resilience and adaptation from the federal level. I mean, one of the things that I myself am concerned about, and I'm sure many of you, is how can we make use of this federal investment, historic investment, in a way that to effectively and efficiently use those dollars to impact the communities that we serve. And so there are so many topics for us to talk about during this roundtable. I want to kind of give you a description of what you can expect if you choose to participate. The roundtables that we convene in this way follow Chatham House rules. So what this means is that there is no attribution. These are closed, invite-only roundtables. We do not have observers. What this means is that people that participate agree that they will also not share, information that is exchanged in these meetings and attribute it to others. So you can certainly share what we talk about, but there's a very explicit emphasis on anonymity, so that people feel like they can say what it is that, some of the most challenging things that they need to point out, illuminate everyone else based on their own perspective and experience. How this normally happens is we will send out an invite. We have limited spots for the roundtable. We, only have about 25 spots. We will host a dinner the night before, as you heard Heather describe. This dinner is intended just for some relationship building. It's very casual, it's fun. We usually have a speaker that comes just for a few minutes. It's very casual, Brock Long, the former FEMA director, will be our speaker at the dinner Wednesday night ahead of the roundtable. We usually try and also bring in some other folks to attend the roundtable on Thursday to offer their perspective. It's really important to us that we have a balance of participants that come from across a variety of sectors and perspectives. In this case, we really want to make sure that we have folks, resilience professionals and disaster professionals, represented in the room and working in sectors and within those categories. Also, very diverse group of people. So there's a lot of thought put into the participants, the perspectives they bring, their own experience, and a lot of relationship building. What we've seen in the past is these are meetings that not only help us have deep, nuanced understanding of these issues, but also develop wonderful partnerships and collaborations coming out of these meetings where people meet people and develop relationships with others. And, our goal is to facilitate the work that the professionals do that we meet with and help build those collaborations so that we can all make the progress that we desire to make. So at the conclusion of the meeting, we write up a summary of the meeting. Again, no attribution, that we send out only to the participants of the meeting to give them an opportunity to correct anything that's written, to add anything that was missed. At the final conclusion of all of that, we will send that final report to the SCDRP, their board, to use and distribute as they see fit, and to the participants that were part of the meeting or the roundtable. We will, for those who wish to participate, we will pay the extra night of hotel, that Wednesday night hotel. We will also provide dinner that Wednesday night, lunch and breakfast that Thursday. We are in the process of securing venues for both of those. My colleague, David Bjortbach, is on this call, and I'm going to invite David to drop his email address into the chat. If this sounds like something you'd like to be included in, please do not wait to send David an email expressing your interest. The slots will go really quickly. And we have limited space. So once they're gone kind of thing. So I hope to see as many of you as possible in January at the roundtable and get to meet all of you. And please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Ashley. We do have a few minutes if anyone would like to type in a question in the chat box, or you can raise your virtual hand and I will call on you. Does anyone have any questions for Ashley? Okay.
That's good. That means I was very clear.
There you go. There you go. Ashley, thank you so much for your time today. David, you too. And we will be following up with you in the future. This is an awesome opportunity for SCDRP members, and we appreciate your sponsorship and coming forward to work with us. Thank you so much. I know Ashley and David have to run away to another meeting, so we can say goodbye to you for now, and we will stay in touch. Thank you again.
Thanks so much.
Josephine, are you raising your hand? Did you have
Oh, I
a
was just
question?
clapping for our presenter.
Ah, fantastic. Thank
Yeah.
you for that. Thank you. All right, I will be moving on then. Fantastic. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce today's second speaker, Dr. Mona Behl, who joins us today from Athens, Georgia. Mona is the Associate Director of the University of Georgia's Sea Grant College Program, where she also holds public service and academic appointments. Mona was formerly a non-residential policy fellow with the American Meteorological Society, or AMS's, policy program. Through her many administrative, pedagogical, and editorial roles, Dr. Behl promotes the co-production and use of scientific knowledge for improved decision making, very much like Dr. Ward. Her research interests include the building of adaptive capacity for local communities to manage the impacts of weather and climate, preparing people for the future of work, and broadening participation in geosciences. Mona is passionate about improving participation, retention, and leadership development of women and minorities in science. She is the founding member of AMS Early Career Leadership Academy and Sea Grant's Community Engaged Internship Program. Mona currently chairs the Mentoring Physical Oceanography Women to Increase Retention program and serves on the leadership board of Earth Science Women's Network. A national award-winning teacher, Dr. Behl earned her bachelor's and master's degree in physics from Punjab University in India and her doctorate in physical oceanography from Florida State University. And it is my pleasure to present Dr. Mona Behl.
Thank you so much, Heather, for that very generous introduction. And thanks for having me here. I also wanted to acknowledge and thanks Josephine for all of her help behind the scenes and in getting those newsletters out. It's always very, very helpful. Thank you all for all that you do. So with that, I'm going to switch to my presentation. Let's see if it works. Here you go. Slideshow. Are you able to see?
Yes, I see your full window though. Are you able to do presenter view?
Yes,
Okay.
you should be able to see that now.
Okay. I see half your slides.
Oops. All right, let
That's
me
okay.
stop this and try again.
Yes, let's close that and try again.
Thank you all for
It,
your
it,
patience.
sure. It was like I was seeing a white box behind your slides.
I hear you. Is this any better?
Yes.
Okay, fabulous. So I just wanted to start by thanking Dr. Ward and David for their presentation. Thank you. I learned a lot, and I only have known them for 10 minutes this morning. So thank you again for all that you do. I also wanted to acknowledge NOAA's Climate Adaptation Partnerships Program, or RISA program, for providing us with funding to do the work that I'm going to talk about. This is the Southeast and Caribbean Climate Alliance. I'm also thankful to the University of Georgia's Latin American and Caribbean Studies Institute for their generous financial contribution to this workshop that we just hosted. Before I begin, I see a number of Sea Grant colleagues, so I just wanted to acknowledge and say them hello too. My colleagues Susan Lovelace and Amanda Guthrie from South Carolina Sea Grant are here. Lillian Ramirez from Puerto Rico Sea Grant, and my mentor and boss, Mark Reese from Georgia Sea Grant. So you can toss all your difficult questions, challenging questions to my wonderful colleagues. We work very, very closely in collaboration on a number of projects. So as I mentioned, everyone, I'm going to talk about the Southeast and Caribbean Climate Alliance, which has been made possible with support from NOAA. So before I begin, I wanted to invite you all to another workshop that we're hosting. This is from an NSF-funded project that focuses on climate-induced human mobility, and it's called People on the Move in a Changing Climate. It was funded from the NSF Coastlines and Peoples program. And what we're trying to do in this project is create a framework for research and policy on climate-induced human mobility, its socioeconomic consequences, and understand its role in adaptation and mitigation. So as part of this project, we're hosting 5 regional workshops in different parts of the country. We've already hosted 3 of them, concluded 3 of them, and 2 are remaining. So you're all invited to participate in the South Atlantic and Caribbean. I'm missing Caribbean, South Atlantic, Caribbean, and Gulf of Mexico regional PMOC workshop. So PMOC stands for People on the Move in a Changing Climate. It's going to be, it's scheduled to take place from November 30th through December 2nd in Atlanta. It's an invite-only workshop. If you're interested in participating, please do get in touch with me. I'll drop my email address in the chat window, but I'd love to see a couple of people from SCDRP participate in our workshop. And if you have more questions about the workshop, please also feel free to get in touch with Susan, Amanda, or Mark, my colleagues at Sea Grant, who are, we're closely collaborating to make this happen. All right, moving on to our team. So Sea Grant, as many of you know, is a boundary organization that tends to connect organizations and people to create collaborative processes that allow both science and policy to achieve their goals. And so we have several people from the Sea Grant network who are engaged in the building and planning of the Southeast and Caribbean Climate Alliance. My colleague Renee Collini at Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida Sea Grant. We have Sophia Drury, who was a graduate student who worked on this project. Ashley Brooke is a healthcare professional, and she is engaged on this project as well. This project is also a partnership with University of Virgin Islands. So Dr. Kristen Grimes is on this project together with Florida representative from Florida Sea Grant. We have Dr. Sherry Larkin, who is the director, and Dr. Latoya O'Neill, who is a healthcare professional and a faculty at University of Florida. The director of Puerto Rico Sea Grant, Chapa, as we lovingly call him, Roberto Chapa, is part of this project. We also have a representative from CDC, Dr. Shubhayu Saha, and then a fellow from ORISE, that is Sophia, a colleague from near Virginia, Circe Gonzalez, and Kiama Williams. And none of this would be possible without the contributions that all of these people have made. So what is the Southeast Climate Alliance? We are a collaboration basically between among rural and coastal communities with climate health experts, practitioners, partners, and stakeholders in the Southeast and Caribbean region. Sea Grant is a boundary organization, and we take pride in bringing people together. I like to say we like to light the bonfire and have people tell stories around the bonfire and hopefully inspire each other for action. Stories help people believe in possibility, help us recommit our vision, and inspire us to turn our intentions into action. So this project very much is focused around bringing people from diverse disciplines together so that we can start talking and understanding each other's language and basically understand, advance the long-term health, resilience, and sustainability of coastal and rural communities in the Southeast and Caribbean region. So our goal here, this was a year-long planning grant that we got from NOAA. And the objectives are to foster a dialogue among diverse stakeholders and partners in our geographical region, and identify what the community needs and wants are, what their priorities are with respect to advancing their equitable health outcomes and community resilience. In particular, we're trying to identify the systemic root causes of health disparities and inequities for communities in the Southeast and Caribbean regions, understand how these health disparities and inequities are worsened by climate change, and then ultimately identify community assets and resources that are needed to develop community-led solutions to eliminate these disparities and inequities in these regions and help our communities to build resilience for extreme weather and climate change events. So as part of this, the Southeast and Caribbean Climate Alliance, we have held 3 engagement opportunities in the past year. Well, this year, it's not over as yet. So we started with a charrette that took place in March. It was all virtual, followed by listening sessions that our graduate student organized and hosted. And then finally, we just concluded a final workshop in San Juan, Puerto Rico on October 31st. So I'm going to talk about each of these engagement opportunities and what we learned, most importantly, from all of these opportunities. So the first was a charrette. For those of you who were like me, who weren't aware what charrette is, it's a collaborative planning process that harnesses the talents and energies of all interested parties to create and support a master plan that advances our shared goals. So we were very careful in integrating justice, equity, diversity, inclusion principles into the identification of the steering committee, the planning team, the entire project, the process, as well as the outcome. So that was an intentional, consideration that we had in mind. So one example is we recruited translators with generous support from University of Georgia's Latin American Studies Institute to ensure that participants who spoke in Spanish, had a choice to understand and engage with us in both English as well as Spanish. Our panelists also included community leaders and practitioners from both healthcare as well as the climate and weather sectors, and so it was, and similar to what Ashley said, we're trying to build coalition around among people who may not necessarily talk to each other, or who come from these disparate disciplines, and in this case it was climate, weather, and health. So we in the charrette, we asked participants 3 questions. One of the questions was focused on how is the health and well-being of our communities being impacted by extreme weather and climate change. And what you see on the left axis are all the different issues that participants identified. The charrette had a lot of community leaders and members, practitioners, who shared that disaster relief and recovery failures were the #1 issue that communities seem to face. Economic and financial impacts, followed by mental health and emotional health issues, degrading ecosystems, severe heat and humidity were some others that emerged to the top. So during the charrette, this is what we did. The participants basically helped us identify direct effects of extreme weather and climate change that were impacting their communities, as well as some indirect impacts of extreme weather and climate change, and then helped us prioritize some of these issues. We also asked them to help us understand how racial, socioeconomic, and structural disparities worsen some health impacts of climate change. And these were the things that came up. Poor infrastructure and contaminated natural resources, lack of access to human and capital resources, inability to mitigate, the systemic poverty in some of the communities that are in our region, and so that was a huge barrier as well. Lack of education on related issues, community resilience related issues, how to access grant funding, that came up over and over again. Lack of accessible and accurate information, and there's this lack of trust in the governments and other organizations, because these government-led programs, they're of great help, but they're, for some reason, those resources are not reaching the communities who actually need them to build their human and financial capacity. And then housing was another issue that came up. Our last question focused on identifying existing community resources and assets that are available to advance equitable health goals and build resilience. And this is what we learned. There was an emphasis that we must engage community members, including youth, faith-based leaders, and healthcare professionals in this resilience work. Leverage community-based organizations, schools, faith-based groups, hospitals, municipalities, and EJ boards, because these are the people, the institutions that have long-term relationships and trust in the communities that they live in, play, and serve in. So we've got to leverage those assets. Those assets also include cultural programs and cultural assets. Also educational, economic, and workforce development program. And then lastly was in the lines of communication, create trusted pathways of communication and use translation services or provide a platform where multilingual participants can participate in the resilience dialogue. In summer, our graduate student hosted some listening sessions. These were smaller focus groups where we asked our participants to take a deeper dive in the questions that we asked during the charrette and share with us, their perspectives more thoroughly. And so we had 25 community members participated in 6 different focus groups. And these were community practitioners and experts across the Southeast and Caribbean regions. So you can see the geographic areas from which the participants came. These are some barriers that were pointed out. So yellow boxes indicate participants from the Caribbean region, Southeast. Participants are indicated by a blue box there. But you see lack of access or distribution and system fragmentation are the 2 things that emerge to the top as barriers to access to some of the resources. And so system fragmentation is a term we coded for the lack of continuity and coordination for healthcare and insurance, as well as breaking of communication, coordination, and collaboration both horizontally among community-led or community-based organizations, as well as vertically, that is across different levels of the government, be it from federal all the way to local. These were the 2 needs that, a couple of needs that came up in the Southeast and Caribbean regions. The first and the most important one was seek community input intentionally, provide more access to funding to the communities, and develop feedback mechanisms so that community partners are not engaged only in the front or the end of a project, but they're continuously engaged as collaborators, as leaders of some of the resilience efforts. We also heard over and over again that there's enough scientific information and knowledge to take action on, but we've got to be able to translate this research into actionable outcomes. So as I mentioned, there was both Southeast and Caribbean identified, system fragmentation and this breaking of communication, both horizontally and as well as vertically, as a big, barrier. There was also in the Caribbean region, we also felt there's lack of accessible data and information to take action. And in the Southeast, room for failure was identified as a barrier to building that community resilience. A factor that came up over and over again was a want, is invest in community leadership. In the Caribbean, a general theme was that they're identified community leaders. However, support would best look like better organization and meetings and physical places to bring these leaders together, and in nurturing their professional development and growth so that they can lead some of the resilience work in their communities. And in the Southeast, it was identified that there's not much community leadership network, and that leadership empowerment and training would be the best way to support this effort. I just wanted to share this anecdote, which it tells a story that ended up coming out of one of the focus groups. This is a anecdote from a community member who is a realtor, a mother, and she says, I tried to write well, and she's talking about a grant that she tried to write. I did write a grant for my community for resilience planning for our estuary. I had a representative support me and everything else, but I didn't have the support of my county. It was pretty devastating from that perspective. They're not paying attention to an issue that's going to impact the community directly. Not to get that support from your local government is frightening to me. I think giving smaller groups or these organizations the opportunities to go for that money competitively or whatever is definitely of great benefit. Because if I could find a place to go I would be there right now, but I don't have an NGO, I would partner with somebody. So again, there's, this overarching theme of, increasing access, awareness to these resources, human and capital, and supporting community members in writing some of those grants and getting access to those resources is a critical need. We culminated the year-long project with this workshop in San Juan. The goal of our workshop was to build on the charrette and the listening sessions that we implemented this year, and to improve the availability and access to those essential resources that the communities helped us identify. The objectives were to create a prioritized list of these essential resources, to integrate health equity considerations into climate action plans, highlight ways in which communities are mobilizing action to promote health equity and build resilience, examine which planning activities can be leveraged, and then examine what is working and not working when it comes to national, local, and state policy frameworks, and lastly, to identify opportunities for coordination and collaboration among different agencies and actors. This is our river of action. It was our workshop in San Juan was truly energizing. We feel incredibly humbled and inspired by the perspectives that community leaders shared with us. So this is truly their knowledge, their wisdom. And so here's just a list of things that came up, and again, emphasizing things that I've spoken about in the past. And this is also my last slide, so I'll be quiet after this. But here are some ways in which we can assist and support and collaborate with rural and coastal communities in the Southeast and Caribbean regions to advance their equitable health outcomes and build resilience. The first and the most important one is intentionally seek community input in the production of knowledge and in the development of policies. They should be a part, they should be leading some of this work, and we play a support role to enable them to do what they need to do. And extractive research practices. Several of us are not trained we're trained in, I'm a physical oceanographer and didn't take any single social science class, and I call myself an aspiring marine social scientist. So I think probably because of the way we're taught in school, and also the way we've always done business, we tend to fly into these communities, do our research, gather our data, and then fly back. And that's the end of it. So over and over again, this theme of extractive research came up, and we've got to pay more attention to ending those kind of practices. So transform research into action. Once again, and we've talked much about that, but there's enough scientific knowledge and data to make some decisions on. So we've got to catalyze that action. Invest human and capital resources for community capacity building. Again, this came up over and over again, that these federal dollars, they never see the light of the day when it comes to communities. So how can we facilitate that transfer of resources for community capacity building, and supporting workforce development and economic development opportunities in the community. Building community leaders is an important theme that came up. Enabling land justice, and this is access to land and creating new land legacies that are rooted in racial and ecological healing. That is quite important. Recognize and build language justice. These are things, some of these things were new to me and some of our other team members as well. Language justice, I learned, is a commitment to ensure that marginalized communities are not denied equal access to services, remedies, and justice, and to foster multilingual spaces so that people have the agency and the voice to share their concerns. Support storytelling, elevate stories of what's worked and what not worked. we were so inspired and energized by community leaders and practitioners taking a leadership role in supporting the resilience of their communities. And there's so much we can learn from each other. So we've got to be able to support that kind of storytelling. With that goes collaboration and coordination. A theme that came up was, instead of competing with each other, let's try and coordinate better, and let's try and collaborate to address these issues. Recognize intersectionality, decolonize. These themes emerged over and over again. And then lastly, close gaps in disaster funding. So that was the end of our year-long project per se, but we're going to sustain the Southeastern Caribbean Climate Alliance. We are already trying to schedule quarterly meetings of the alliance next year, and so there was a lot of us were energized because of the inspiration that we drew from our community partners. To continue working around the themes that we identified during the workshop, and to foster that communication, coordination, and collaboration that we talked about. So with that, I am so grateful for your time. I'm so sorry I went on and on, but that's what happens when you give me the floor. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you so much. And now I want to open up to questions. Let's take about 5 minutes for your questions, and I know you've got them. You can either type them in the chat box, or you can raise your virtual hand, and I'll call on you in the order in which your hand is raised. Questions for Mona. Vamsi, you have a question.
Yes, great talk, Mona. Thank you so much. And it's very inspiring to hear the kind of work that you're doing. So the question that I have is, when you work in these multicultural, multilinguistic communities, there are possibly uh, different levels at which these disasters impact different sets of people. And is there a way in your research to also quantify that, and sort of weigh the different impacts uh, to people accordingly? So let me crystallize that by giving an example. So somebody might say that lack of information is one of the most critical things that's affecting them during a disaster, but that lack of information might manifest itself with different levels of severity and different levels of outcomes for different types of peoples. So is there a way you sort of quantify that effect as well in your analysis?
Hamzi, thank you so much for that very, very important question. We didn't get to that level of granularity in this year-long planning project. The goal was really to bring people from Southeastern Caribbean regions together to identify some overlaps and some themes that that could be addressed. So your question is incredibly important. We didn't look into it into those kind of details, but it's certainly something that we can follow up.
Thank you so much.
Yes, excellent question. Anyone else have a question for Mona? Anyone else question? If you do think of additional questions for Mona in the future, let's have Mona, why don't you jot your email address into the chat box, and then if a question pops in to their head afterwards, they can shoot you an email. And I see some future collaborations as well. Oh, did I
Fabulous.
see a hand? Let's see. Oh, Gino has a question. Yes, Gino.
Hi, Mona. Thanks so much for this. Good to see you again. Your takeaway points, I think, are all really important. I'm just trying to think through how we go about doing that, and what are the organizational collaborations that we need to solve that. I mean, everybody kind of goes at this independently in some ways, and in some ways that's good. In some ways it's not very efficient. I'm just trying to think through, I guess, what's next. So you got this great list of things we should all be doing. how do we do it, I guess is my question, and how do we do it together?
Yeah, Gino. So with the Southeastern Caribbean Climate Alliance, we hope, as I mentioned, we hope that this is not a one-off project and we can continue to sustain the network that we've built. And quite frankly, it begins with that information sharing and resource sharing and communication, right? So we're hoping that through the quarterly meetings of the Alliance, we'll be able to share some knowledge and information around resilience. The other thing that we thought might be useful is, it came up over and over again how communities need access to accurate information, as well as they need to build capacity around grants to different federal organizations. We talked about how the timeline to submit some of the grant applications is so short that communities aren't able to access the resources that are actually made available for them. So we talked about how the Southeastern Caribbean Climate Alliance might put together a list of resources, even a simple list of materials or application content materials that are required for various applications, be it to FEMA, to HUD, to NOAA, so all the way organizing information in a manner that's accessible to people, to fostering exchange of knowledge and information so that we're working collaboratively around certain projects instead of competing with each other. So another need that I highlighted was, when these opportunities do come up, communities are put in a place where they have to compete against each other. And sometimes that competition is not as instead of competition, we should be fostering collaboration. So how can we work together so as to identify a community that we want to focus on? We put all our effort behind one grant application that we know is complete and is likely to be successful, then developing several proposals and competing with one another. So I don't know if that answers your question, Gino. Thank you again for asking. It's great to see you, but I hope that the Alliance in some ways is able to foster that kind of collaboration, which is much needed in our region.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Gino. And it looks like we have a follow-up question from Vamsi, and then we'll move on to partnership announcements. Vamsi.
Yes, thank you, Heather. Actually, Gina's question was very opportune as well because mine kind of is a follow-up to that. So, in terms of participation in your Southeastern Caribbean Climate Alliance as a way to facilitate on-the-ground action, are you looking primarily to community leadership only, or are you also interested in engaging with a wider group of stakeholders and participants, including academia, industry, and for-profit, not-for-profit organizations as well? And is there
Yeah,
a way, a channel to participate?
Yeah, it's actually the latter. We're including everyone, but centering community leaders and members and their well-being. So yes, the answer is anybody is welcome. And like I said, I've dropped my email address in the chat window. If you would like to be included in future meetings of the Alliance, please let me know, and I'll make sure that you're added to the listserv. It's centering community leaders and members and their wisdom, and then building an alliance around them to support them.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you, Mona, for sharing with us your insightful work today, and we look forward to hearing more from you as it moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now I will share a few partnership announcements, some important deadlines, and a little bit of timeline, what's coming up. So many changes are happening with our partnership. We are growing, and as a result, we are formalizing our policies and procedures. So as part of this, we are standardizing our annual memberships on the calendar. And from Now is the time, since most of you renew your memberships right before or at the annual meeting. So if you joined since August or you joined between now and January 31st, 2023, your membership will begin on February 1st, 2023. So we will all be standardized. And remember, you can join as an individual member for $100 or as a group member with a larger donation. So, and now is the time, because all members in good standing will receive 1/3 off meeting registration. And you will receive a promo code in an email from me for you to use on the Eventbrite registration page. So as a member in good standing, and that is defined as a current dues paying member, you can vote in the first official SCDRP advisory board election. And under these new policies and procedures, we are adding 6 additional advisory board members. Nominations are open now. They are open until December 14th. You can nominate yourself, you can nominate another member, and these nominations are occurring online via the Google form that is linked in the SCDRP newsletter. Please fill that out. As you can see on the slide, we need to fill 1 seat with a member from these categories: South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, U.S. Virgin Islands. We have 1 more open seat for a nonprofit, and we have 1 more open seat for a local government representative. So please reach out if you have any questions. Please reach out if you would like to know more about being on the advisory board and what responsibilities that entails. Now let's take a look at some important upcoming dates. So remember, SCDRP annual meeting registration is open. Reserve your ticket through the SCDRP website today. On December 15th, this is an important date. Several things are happening. This will be our next virtual monthly partnership meeting, same place, same time, from 10 to 11 a.m. And during this meeting, we will announce our speakers and our panelists for our annual meeting in Miami. So this is a very, very exciting. Also on this date, the advisory board nominations will end. Then let's flip over to the new year on Sunday, January 8th. Please keep this date in mind. This is the deadline to reserve your hotel room at the Novotel Miami Brickell at the discounted group rate of $199 per night. And then the next day, on Monday, January 9th, we will begin voting. So by then, everybody should be back at work. We will begin voting online for the new advisory board members, and the online voting will continue through the first day of the annual meeting in Miami, and it will conclude midnight on that January 24th. And then the next morning, we're having a business meeting in Miami, just us, the partnership, and we will announce the results of the voting, and we will congratulate our new advisory board members. And then everything kind of starts fresh on September 1st, 2023. Our new policy and procedures will go into effect. Our new advisory board members will come on board. So it's going to be an exciting time in the history of the partnership. Next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, December 15th. And we will be hearing from the private sector for perspectives on corporate readiness and response to natural disasters. I am extremely excited to announce our super speaker will be Mr. Ivan Biez. He is the Director of Public Affairs and Government Relations for Walmart Puerto Rico. And now we would like to hear from you. It's time for our partner sharing and updates. You can use the chat box, which I see many of you have already. Please share what's going on with you. You could share resources, funding, webinars, recent studies, etc. If you would like to speak, please unmute yourself. You can raise your hand and turn on your camera. George.
Yeah, thanks. George Bonner, in Outer Banks, North Carolina. So we're working with the Department of Energy on a program. It's called ETIP. It's focused on building energy resilience for island and coastal communities. And we are the DOE's regional partner for the Southeast. We're currently working with 3 communities, 2 in North Carolina, Nags Head and Ocracoke, and a community in Puerto Rico on energy resilience. And basically, this program provides technical support and it will helpfully tee them up for future funding opportunities. So there is a current RFI out from DOE on the large DOE's Office of Energy Demonstrations, looking at how they can build energy resilience in rural communities, and that's going to be demonstration projects. So I think this ETIP project is a great opportunity to build up to those opportunities. So if you know of an island or a rural community in the southeast that may be interested, please let me know. And I'm also hoping to be at the annual meeting in January. And our application period for the next cohort will be after January following that. So it kind of works out great.
Perfect. Thanks, George. Very nice to see you. Thank you for sharing that. Do we have any other partners that would like to share events? Okay, perfect. Remember, you can always share any of your updates to SCDRP at socorro.org. That's a general email that goes to all of us, and then we can put that into our newsletter to share with the 400 folks that receive our newsletter. Perfect. So a special thank you to our super speakers today, Dr. Ashley Ward and Dr. Mona Behl. Thank you so much. Such great work that both of you are doing. And a big thank you to you for joining us today and your continued contributions to SCDRP. Thank you again, and happy Thanksgiving to you and yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.